Amanda Ardente is a wife, mother, and a veterinarian who specializes in nutrition. She studied vet med technology at Wilson College, then went on to pursue further education at North Carolina State University. And that is where she graduated as a doctor of veterinary medicine. But she wasn't done there. She went on to pursue further education at the University of Florida, earning her PhD in animal nutrition. Not only does Amanda kick butt in the animal science world, she also kicks butt in her workouts. And I know this because Amanda has been a part of Team Resilience since 2020, and I've had the pleasure of training her for the past 4 years. Just a few weeks ago, Amanda was gracious enough to take time out of her schedule to sit down with me and to talk about her career, animal science, entrepreneurship, and how she balances all of that with her own fitness. I will leave Amanda's contact info in the description below, and I hope you guys enjoy our conversation. Stay resilient.
Hey.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you? Hold on. Let me blur my background.
Thanks.
There we go. So you don't see my unmade bed.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Can you describe what exactly it is that you do? What is your official title? What is your company name and all of that?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a veterinarian that specialized in nutrition and then specifically focused on zoo and aquatic animals. So because there's not a lot of jobs out there for this specific industry I selected, I went ahead and started my own business called Ardente Veterinary Nutrition. And I started it about almost 7 years ago. I'm in my 7th year. I was intending to do pets and that sort of thing too, but the zoo industry has really kind of kicked onto it. So I am pretty much exclusively zoos and aquariums now. Yeah.
So wouldn't that mean the demand is up there too?
It is.
Because there's not a lot of people who do what you do?
Yeah. So generally in the zoo nutrition world anyway, the individuals that are nutritionists are generally not veterinarians. So they are animal science majors trained in nutrition.
I feel like you have not a knock on animal scientists, but that's the difference between a nutritionist on the human side and then someone who is a doctor or a surgeon who specializes in nutrition too. If you're someone who is on that realm of having some kind of gastro problems, digestive system problems, you're gonna be oh, this person can take care of more of my needs because they not only know the nutrition behind it, they can actually do the procedures, or they actually know about the procedures and the surgeries and the diseases. That's pretty neat. So are you getting reached out to, you're getting contracted by these places and they hit you up directly? Tell me about that process. How does it work?
So it's been largely word of mouth because I haven't really had time. I started a business and I started a business, COVID happened, I had babies and there wasn't time for marketing. So it was slow going, for the first couple of years, but that was okay because I had kids and I was moving and it's just been word of mouth. So people reach out. I have a website and they can do a contact me form. The zoo world is an aquatic world, especially, is pretty small. So we all kind of know each other through somebody else. So it all eventually gets back to you. So
Wow.
So I've expanded my clientele a lot actually within the last probably 2 years. So
that's awesome. Explain to me one of your trips, because I saw the trip that you just took out to Cali. You go out there. What exactly did you do out there? I heard of a version of it. I heard a story of it about it, but I don't want to explain it the wrong way. So tell me exactly what you were doing out in Palm Springs.
I don't always do site visits. I don't think I necessarily have to, but sometimes it's helpful to get the FaceTime with the people, right? Especially if there are complicated cases or teams that might be dynamic, in their makeup and who works where and that sort of thing. So it's nice to get the FaceTime with the individuals. So they have a nutrition team that prepares the diets. And then that team works with the animal care teams that are responsible for the, individual animal areas. And they have some pretty unique issues out there. They're a park that they have pretty large exhibits and the animals, because of the weather, they get to be out a lot. So from a feeding perspective, it makes it challenging because when animals come into a barn, you're able to feed them individually. Whereas if they're out on a big pasture, like a safari, it's more of a group feeding strategy. So if there are individual needs that need to be met, it's more of a like a troubleshooting, how are we going to get there, for each of
Yeah.
the animals. So that's where like being there, it was really great being there because they're a pretty unique setup. And so I got to see kind of how they interact, where the animals are, what the space looks like that we're dealing with, and kind of the struggles that they have in the management of the animals and feeding strategies. So
That is so interesting
yeah.
because what I'm taking from that is you have to know a little bit about animal psychology as well, right?
Yeah.
In my mind, it's like, okay, yeah, if it's in a barn, a smaller controlled setting, you could feed the animals individually. There's
Yeah.
no like dynamic of like hierarchy or like,
Yes,
these
totally.
animals taking over and hoarding the food from these other animals. And
Yes,
like and
100%.
then certain animals are more, protective over their foods than other.
Yeah,
So,
right. That
and
happens a lot with like primates, shockingly.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Where
So
they like hoard their little section of food, and their
yeah,
preferred items over here, and then the other group members don't get it, and you have to, and then that one's chubby, and then now you need to deal with weight loss in that one while the other one,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
So you're dealing with, and I'm assuming you're also dealing with this. When we're in a service business like the one we are, and we're also dealing with the psychology of the people that we're working with too.
Yeah, 100%.
And in a field that's very nichey, I'm not even sure that's a word, but in a field that's very nichey like that, where like I have a really good friend who is also a vet, and she goes around the zoos and she does some contracting. People who get into those spaces, they stay in those spaces for a long time.
Yes.
Right? And when you have that dynamic, you have people who, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but you have people who become very passionate, to develop an ego about certain things. This is the way we do things.
Yes, this is the way we've always done it, right?
Yeah. So talk to me about like, all right, the dynamic with like, animal psychology goes into what you do. People's psychology also goes into what you do. Does it make it harder on your job, or is your job and you've accepted it and like that you've factored that in?
I kind of enjoy that part of the job.
Okay.
Like I like explaining to teams that are used to caring for their certain animals, and these people are, like you just said, passionate about what they do. They're lifers. They're generally, they have worked with these animals for a long time, the species for a long time, so they know their intricacies. And so I think it's like relationship building with those individuals so that they trust what I'm saying.
Yes.
And that I also appreciate the job that they do, and that they have a unique perspective to offer me about their animals, and what they're going to prefer and what's going to work and what's not going to work. Because if it's not, in the end, like from creating nutrition plans for people, if it's not practical for their life, it's not going to be followed, right? And so then what's the point? It was worth nothing. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad you just did that right there, because like everything that you're saying, I'm trying to like relate it back to like what I do in my field. And like you said, the number one thing in the end is this going to be implemented?
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter how great the plan is, and the macros and like, it doesn't matter. What matters is this going to be implemented? Maybe it's not perfect, but for a long period of time to get the results that we are looking for.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And like transitioning there too. So like I think about primates, and primates tend to be on heavy fruit diets because everybody thinks that they need a bunch of fruit. So, but the fruit that they're eating in the wild is different than the cultivated fruit that we've created.
Right. That is
true. It's much more, their wild fruit is much more akin to like zucchini and cucumber and, like the bland vegetables that we would think to be bland. So creating like a plan where the ring-tailed lemur gets from like a super heavy fruit diet to one that's more naturalistic for them in terms of sugar content can take months, right? Like of just transitioning little bits so that you don't get rejection from the animals or rejection from the team that like this is going too fast, and they're not, the behaviorally the animals aren't responding well, or or it's too much of a shock to the team member system too, so yeah.
And that's almost like me transitioning someone from their, Diet Coke every single day to go into like a seltzer water. It's like, I'm like, all right, maybe we just compromise by saying you could like use it as a treat on the weekends. And they're like, okay, I can do that. And then
exactly. I'll never forget one of my moments, like early in my career. I was actually with a dog and working with a pet owner on a weight loss plan for his dog who was severely overweight. The man loved his dog to a fault nutritionally, right? So he was a delivery man, and the dog like sat in the passenger seat of his delivery truck every day. And so a routine that they had every Sunday when he was doing like Sunday deliveries was to get a McDonald's sausage biscuit for he and the dog. So I'm like, this is important to him, right? Like this is an important part of their bond. And no, it's not the best for the dog, and for the weight loss plan, but we figured it into the weight loss plan. We're like, okay, every week he's going to get a sausage biscuit. So let's figure it into like how that's going to fit into the rest of the diet.
How did it end up going? Like, what was the...
Great. It was great. Yeah. The guy followed the rest of the plan,
How long do you think he stayed on the plan or worked with you? Like time frame?
I mean, it took a year for us for us to like tackle the weight loss in that dog. But we were able to achieve it.
You know what? So that is right there my job in a nutshell. Like with my job, I'm dealing with animal, but this animal is a human with a whole range of emotions and history behind them. I have to balance out the idea with a client that, all right, there's two different ways we could take. We could take the expressway or we take the scenic route. And most people naturally want to take the scenic route. Slower, it's more beautiful. And that's the route that says, I'm going to have my sausage McMuffin every week, right? Yeah. But they want to get there in the speed as taking the expressway. So I have to balance out like, okay, you want to get there fast, but you want to take this route. So we have to find ways to do, expressway and then exit off and spend some time and chill.
Yes.
Or I keep having to remind you, scenic route, we're not here for the speed. We're not here for the speed. We're not here for the speed. We're here for the scenes, or we're here to take it easy, or we're here because our friends are here. Whatever it is.
Right.
Balancing those two is very, very hard. And that becomes my job. And there's different tricks I use with my clients to kind of, do both. One is the challenges, right? I'll get someone who's like doing a one-on-one program. It's like, hey, do you want to join this challenge? So it kind of like refocuses them, or it gets them like in a groove where they could go a little bit faster. And then we go back to something a little more, I like that. That's so interesting. And it's interesting that you did the same concept with a dog who enjoys the McDonald's. It's literally what I'm doing right now with one of my clients who's obsessed. They're obsessed with Domino's pizza. So I'm like, yo, if you work really hard during the week, you can have your Domino's pizza on Friday, Saturday. Matter of fact, I just made a video about it when I'm talking about there's this wave of fitness or dietitian, nutritionist influencers who show you two different meals. And they're like, this meal is this many calories, but you can do the same with like, food that's like more nutritionally dense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these things are cool, but don't get so tied up and trapped up in this, because every time you eat something that's soul food, I call things like whole food or soul food, not bad or good. Every time, I don't want you thinking, oh my goodness, I could have ate 3 apples for this Snickers bar. Or, oh my gosh, I could have had, like, I don't want you thinking like that every time you eat.
Right.
Even though it's good to know.
Yeah.
It
serves a different purpose though, right?
Yes, it shouldn't control your life.
Yeah.
All right. So I got another question for you. Describe the challenges that come up most often in your line of work. Like the one thing that you can definitely consider that this is probably going to rise up as a challenge almost every single time that you have to like see a client, take on a new client, revisit an old client.
Specific to a species or specific to like the human interaction?
Now we're getting fancy. How about we always split it in two? Because your job is very unique in the fact that you're dealing with both.
Yeah. So for the species challenge, it's definitely like the how do we enrich the lives of the animals without going overboard in the food category, without making it like food is love, right?
Right.
Are there other ways or healthy ways to approach their enrichment so that, again, like the keepers feel like they're, or aquarists feel like they're giving to the animals to help their lives be more fulfilled or enriched, but then keeping it in check nutritionally too. So like those primates with the sugar issues, you know, how can we address that? So that's something that always comes up. On the human side, it's how can I get them to trust me? I'm not just this person with a website and some letters behind my name. I want to work with you. I want it to be practical. I want it to be a back and forth. I want to know what's working and what's not working. And, you know, how are you going to trust me in that relationship so that it benefits the animal in the end, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah. So it's always kind of thinking about that. Yeah.
So when you go about your work and you are faced with these challenges, when you're going, all right, I'm going to face these head on, I'm going to do what I have to do. How do you grade yourself? You work for yourself. Like you're in a very specific niche where, like, for me, grading myself with my clients, depending on who you are, how you look at it, I look at it differently than most people do. But something very, very easy to see is, all right, someone's transformed. All right, they were this many pounds, now they're this many pounds.
Yeah,
they couldn't run, now they could run. Like for me, I'd grade myself a much more than that. But they're very there's a lot of different
like
trainers. Measurable things. How do you grade yourself in those two categories? Because like you're getting feedback on the animals. I don't want to answer the question for you, but you go. Let me know.
So for the animals, it's nice I always try and do like follow-ups. So sometimes clients have different ways of working with me. So there are like kind of ongoing relationships like you with your one-on-one clients. And then there's ones that just jump in for the 60-day challenge and then leave, you know?
Yeah.
So there's different, you know, connections there. But regardless, I try and do a follow-up so that I can know, you know, how things have gone for the animal, what has worked and what hasn't. So I can tell kind of by similar metrics how they've done. If the plan was to lose weight, if the plan was for like management of arthritis and stuff like that, have we achieved what we wanted to 6 months, a year later? And then for the people, I found it's more subjective, I guess, but it's like if I feel like they're connecting with me, it's like it's a feel, right? Like, are they exchanging with me? Do I feel like it's a good, honest, even exchange? If I feel like we need to tap in a little closer, or they need a little bit more contact, then maybe I'll arrange like monthly meetings where we talk about things. And so it's more of a FaceTime like this, because the email back and forth can get kind of impersonal and and like too many emails need to be exchanged for what could be had in like a 30-minute conversation. So, and then I actually worked with recently a business consultant she's fantastic in the veterinary space. And she encouraged me to do a client survey, which I was so terrified to do. But I did it. Scary. I did it with, oh my gosh, so scary. I did it. She helped me formulate the questions and I sent it out to like previous and current clients. I got great feedback. You know, it was like some constructive, like, sometimes my turnaround time is terrible because I'm busy and there's only me. It's helped me realize that I need to expand asking for help, you know, like I brought on an assistant and I have another nutritionist who's helping me with some consults. So hopefully we can get through projects faster. But it was good to get the positive feedback too, you know, about what they liked about what I was doing and kind of what resonated. Yeah. Sweet.
That is awesome. All right. Next question for you. How do you keep up with industry trends and advancements?
Well, there's far less in our field than yours, but you know, we have conferences. It's a small community again, so I stay in touch. Like I have my people in the zoo and zoo nutrition world and aquatic world that are kind of my touch points, and I check in with them. Is there something else I should be thinking about? Are there any new articles out there? Or, you know, how have you addressed this problem? So that way I can kind of stay current in that realm.
That's it's like a tough thing. Hard. I can imagine, because it's tough for me. Tough because there's so much out there. If you try to go the fast and easy route, which is just like social media where the information is coming to you, you have to do a better job of sifting all the information and figuring out which is trustworthy, which is not, which is relative, which is not. Because there's so much science out there. There could be science that, all right, they just found that this chemical is in this food and this chemical is responsible for hair loss. And it's like, all right, we got to actually look at that food now. Now we got to look at how much of this chemical is in the food. Now we have to look up how much of that chemical in your system over how long of time is the thing that causes hair loss. And then you're like, okay, that means I would have to eat this every single day for the rest of my life to really get that amount. So you have to do a lot of follow-up and to really understand. And, you know, one of the things that I try to do is I hate this expression, kill two birds. So I'm not going to use it, especially with a vet right here. So, you know, to do two things at once, I try to get a topic that I'm focusing on for a month, do as much like deep research on that, and use that time to also make videos so I can like educate like my audience on the what I'm like reading myself. And that helps me not only like remember the information, that helps me just, you know, be more well-rounded in what I'm doing and what I'm talking about. So that's awesome. All right. Now, what do you think is your greatest professional achievement? This is where I want you to like brag about yourself a little bit. Like, oh, I did this or I did that. I know you're not a bragger, but brag about yourself a little bit.
Mike. I mean, I'm pretty proud of the fact that I did create this business where there's no model for it out there. Like I did my market research, right? By like using the people I knew in the industry to come up with a plan of how I would go about developing this business, how I would charge for services and like what that structure looked like.
What it looks like, because there's nothing like that
there's
out
no
there,
model, right? There's no model for it. There are other people that do nutrition consulting, but generally they have like full-time jobs at a zoo or an institution, and then they're kind of doing it on the side. Doing it full-time as my only gig has been, it's something that I am proud of. And I haven't had to do a whole lot of marketing, and word of mouth has helped my business grow. And yeah, I am proud. I'm proud of that.
That is awesome. And I'm proud of you. It's tough. It's so tough. It's tough to do that. And it's one of the things that you just said, like coming up with pricing, even that, when you're someone who's really passionate about what they do, and when you're someone who's new to like being on like the business side of things, I've seen a lot of people trip up in that section, in that category of business, where, you know, since they're new, they not only have no idea of what to charge, but sometimes they don't have the boldness of charging what they're worth and what their services are worth. And they don't have the clientele and the money coming in to be able to be bold too and say, oh, no, I don't need you calling for my services if you can't pay what I'm worth. So I've seen a lot of people trip up in that area. I've seen a lot of people just go, oh yeah, I didn't know what to charge, so I just charged this. And I'm looking at them like, you should be charging 3 times, 4 times that, you know, something along those lines. So yeah, that's really cool. Kind of shifting the focus a little bit.
Okay.
And we're gonna make our way all the way back around. But when it comes to fitness, health, nutrition, talk to me about you and how you've done with your own fitness, nutrition. And just to give a little background on this interview, I think we've been training with each other for what, 2.5 years now, somewhere around that?
It was during COVID.
Really?
Yeah.
So 4 years.
2019, because I was with,
Wow.
Yeah, because I had Grady and I was pregnant. Yeah.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm remembering we were talking about pelvic floor exercises so you could get your core back.
Yep.
All right. So talk to me about this process.
Oh my gosh. Well, so pre-you, I was a big runner, and that was like my only form of workout. And then I started doing this boot camp where I got kind of into the lifting. Then it wasn't really, I did it pretty far up through my first pregnancy. Then after, I like didn't know how to get back into it. I also didn't know how to leave my house with an infant and like my husband, and like, how does that work, you know? So it was slow going, like getting back into it. And then Leah told me about you and being able to just do it in my house. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe we can make this work. So yeah, so I think that's kind of how I got turned on to you and like incorporating virtual workouts, but still having, I really like that you do it live, because there's still that accountability where even though I know you're not going to like yell at me for not coming, I feel like I show up, right? I show up because I know this is the time that the class is, and I treat it like a class, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I feel guilty when I can't be there or something comes up, you know? So that has worked for me, like mentally, to keep me kind of in it. And then when I've had to take breaks for kids or life, then I know you're still there to kind of come back
Yeah,
to.
always.
And then nutrition stuff has been hard for me to kind of wrap my head around. I was always the kind of person, fortunately, who never really had to think about what I ate. I just ate
Yeah.
and I did fine and my body would stay the same. And, you know, I never really had to concern myself with it. And then I always remember my parents being like, there's going to be one day where it catches up with you. And I'm like, no, not me, not me. Yeah.
No, no way.
Yeah. And then, oops, there we go. Yeah. So babies and hormones and then just aging, like it all changes. I've had to pay attention now. Like that's been a struggle for me mentally because it annoys me that I have to do it, that I have to keep up with it, that it's
Yeah.
something that's going to be lifelong at this point. Like I'm only 43. Like why 44 now? Why why is this like my the rest of my life I have to worry about how much I drink or how much
Yeah.
candy I eat or whatever, you know? But that's my reality. So if I want to stay healthy, you know, and that's
Yeah.
what's important to me.
I
Yeah,
think it was back in 2022 that you did the summer challenge,
I
the
did.
60 Days Till Summer challenge,
Hmm.
and you did really well
I
in
did.
that. I think you did like 11 pounds
Yeah,
down over
11
like
pounds.
over two something percent body
Hmm.
fat. Do you
Hmm.
remember that process? Can you like pull your
Oh
memory
yeah.
back to there and like
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
tell me about it. Like how hard was it for you? Like what was it like through that?
So the hardest part was actually it ending because then I didn't know what to do with myself after. I'm really good when someone comes up with a plan for me. There's a stepwise process that I need to take, and I'm good at following directions. I like had my workout plan and I was very intent on getting it done. You set the challenges for us, and I'm competitive. So like with my own
You're
self.
like,
So I
yeah.
want to like meet the challenges and then the accountability part of like having to post it. Like I'm not a big poster generally, but I wanted to show you and I wanted to show the other people on the challenge that I was
Like
doing it.
I'm doing this.
All of that like worked the way my brain works. And so I found it not that hard, honestly, to like keep up with. But again, it was the when it ended. I'm like, well, God, now what do I do? I don't have the plan
Yeah.
anymore. I don't have the action plan. So I tried to create my own. And then it was like, and then it just falls away. And then I struggled for a little bit with should you work out that hard? Should you be that mindful over what you eat every day? Or should you take breaks, like you said, and like come back to it later?
One thing that I truly believe is that we always, as humans, especially as people who are overachievers or people who really want to do well, like we tend to be the last person to give ourselves grace
Mm.
and space. And one thing that I've had to battle with, especially personally in my own fitness and everything, is understanding and being okay with having seasons. I always relate
It's
it to
so hard.
football. Imagine if I had to play a season, games for the whole
Whole
year.
year. Right. It's unreasonable,
But
right?
it's unreasonable.
Yeah.
The
Right.
NFLPA is fighting the NFL right now. The NFLPA is the institution that represents the
Oh,
Players
okay.
Association. So
Hmm.
you need it to balance out the NFL because the NFL is just thinking money, money,
Money,
money, money,
money.
money. So
Yeah.
it used to be only a 16 game season. The NFL begged and fought the NFLPA for a long time to get one more game. That was only like, I want to say 4 years ago.
Hmm.
They're fighting for another game. So there's going to be an 18 game season coming up. And you can imagine 18 game season. Let's say you're a team that makes it far into the postseason. So you play another 3, 4 games. That is 20 some games. And football is a dangerous, hard, brutal sport. I still sometimes feel, my knee, my shoulder, my elbow. All that to say, you can't play a season the whole year round.
Yeah.
But there is a season that you're going to be going hard in your
Yeah.
workouts. And then
Yeah.
there's a season where right after the season in the spring, I remember that's the time where I felt like, all right, I could just like relax. I don't have to think about anything. I don't even, if I don't want to work out, I don't even have to work out. I could just like relax and just chill. And then like once we get closer to the summer, all right, I'll start to kick it back in.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with fitness, I believe. Is fitness like a year-round thing? And yeah, like to stay healthy but if you want to have seasons where you're like, okay, I'm going to dial in, I'm going to focus, I'm going to go hard for this amount of time, I think that's good for your mental too, because that
Yeah.
one, it's good for your mental toughness
Hmm.
because you get to see yourself focus and do something hard. After you've set your mind to do something hard and you do it, that builds up so much like self-esteem. You get like real proud of yourself.
Yeah.
It also builds up the physical toughness too. And it gives you a little bit of a boost. And I believe that those boosts that you have give you an opportunity to, one, relax a little bit after, and two, it keeps you on like an upward steady climb. Now that climb might not be as exponential, like, you know, forever, because there's a point in time where that climb gets like, you know, that the graph starts tailing off a little bit, but it's always going to be upward. There's a whole wave, you know, when there's waves of people thinking one way, there's going to be a counter wave. So there are people who are out there who are like, 60-day challenges are unhealthy. They just teach you to look at fitness short term and blah blah blah. And I'm like, all right, I understand what you're saying. I don't totally disagree with you.
Right.
But if you use it as like, I'm gonna do this, and then you're still doing fitness and you still being mindful in other ways, like, that's great, as long as it's not taking you into something unhealthy. Even though we're focusing in, I never try to make anything we do like unhealthy. Try to make the challenges reasonable. But even the eating, it's not like we're just eating grass with the meal plans. We're like eating well-balanced meals. Teaching people that aspect of like balance is tough, because especially with overachievers, especially with people who are competitive like you and I, especially people who are even like former athletes, they get into this like all or nothing mentality.
All or nothing. Yep.
And it's like, all right,
that was
I
one
gotta
big
go.
thing I learned from you. Too.
All or nothing mentality killed me for a long time. Oh my goodness.
Seeking perfection in all of it. And you're like,
I remember I hated running. I still don't like love running, but I like running. And I remember like, all right, just run. Don't time yourself, because I'm always like looking at the time. I gotta beat this. Like don't.
What's my pace? What's my pace?
Yeah, don't look at your pace. I don't care about what your pace is. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you a time limit. So you can't escape this time limit. Whether you're running slow or fast, you're going to run for 20 minutes straight. So just run for 20 minutes straight. Find out where you can be. At the end, look at the pace. And then that will be your pace for your next run. And you're going to run that pace for 2 miles. I'm like, okay, I had to like reverse engineer my brain, because that's not how my brain naturally is.
Hard.
And I'm like, yo, this is so slow. But I was able to sustain it. And that's what mattered. And eventually that got faster and faster. And one thing that you said back during that challenge, and I won't forget it, because I tell my clients in my one-on-one program, I tell a lot of them who I find have similar personalities to you. I tell a lot of them to do this strategy. I'm not sure if you remember it, but you said at the end of that challenge, I didn't even really look at the scale. I wasn't going to look at the scale, but I knew that I was doing. You knew. I was like, I was going to stick to the plan, and I knew that it was going to work, and I knew something was happening. But when I did finally get on the scale at the end, I was like, oh shit.
It was crazy to me. Because I don't like looking at the number. It's has never served me. So, I just like, it's about how I feel in my clothes,
Exactly. And so when I meet people and I do my interviews with them, and like, I get them going, and like, we're about to start the program, a lot of them I'll say, all right, this is called a body stat, and I'll put it on their like calendar to do on the app. And I'll say, you're not going to do this, and you're not going to step on the scale until this mark. We hit the 45, because that program's a 90-day program. So when we hit that 45-day mark, you'll do it. And then when we hit the 90-day mark, you'll do it. I don't want you to do it. And they're like, but how am I going to know it's working? How are we going to? I'm like, you're going to know it's working by these 3 things. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to have performance goals. So the performance goals are going to be things we do on week 1. Like, I'm going to have you do as many modified push-ups as you can in 1 minute. And then we're going to test that again. I'm going to have you run a mile. We're going to see what that mile looks like. Oh, what if I don't make it? I'm like, you can walk some if you need to walk. They're like, oh, okay. And then we're going to have a sit-up test. I want to see how many really good setups you could do. You're going to record it. You're going to send it to me. How many steps can you do in a minute? So when we have those, we can see what it looks like in the month. We can see like what it looks like in the second month and then the third.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a clothes test. All right. Give me your favorite outfit to wear. You're going to take pictures in it. We're going to post it. We're going to take pictures in it at the month mark, the 2-month mark, the 3-month mark. And then we're just going to have a tap in feeling test. Where you tap in, you slow down, you go, how do I feel right now? Do I feel in shape? Do I feel good? Do I feel more energized? And you're going to write down your feelings, top 10 things that come to your mind. We're going to write it down now of how you feel about yourself, how you literally feel. We're going to do it at the month mark, the 2-month mark, the 3-month mark.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times when I do something like that, it increases the rate of success because a lot of the times people give up because their measuring stick is messed up. And that's one of the reasons why I asked you, like, professionally, like, how do you measure yourself? Because the way people measure themselves, that's what kind of frames their mental state and their point of view. If you measure yourself by like the scale, in that first month, the scale moves like maybe 1 pound, you're like, screw this. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Whereas if you stuck to it, it may have moved 5, 6, 7 pounds the second month. You never know. I always have this like dumb metaphor that I use, and I'm like, all right, you're taking a trip to Jamaica. The first 10 minutes of you like leaving your house, you didn't even really go anywhere. You like made sure your bags are packed, you're fixing the mirror, seatbelt, you're getting out the driveway, like your road, the side road. You didn't go anywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even like an hour, 2 hours into your trip, maybe you got to the airport. You didn't get anywhere. Like you're sitting down. If you judged you're like, yo, that was 30 miles in 3-4 hours. I'm never gonna get to Jamaica. But it doesn't work like that. Like the first 10 minutes you didn't go anywhere, but eventually you got on to a highway. Yep. And that highway, the 10 minutes on the highway is way different than 10 minutes. And then eventually you're going to get in a plane. And 10 minutes on a plane is going to be way different than 10 minutes on the highway. So I always use that example. Like you never know what that journey is going to look like. What you need to know, though, is if you keep moving, that gives you the only chance of success. You're never going to get to Jamaica by going back to your house. Yeah. Maybe you turn on the TV and you imagine it, but you're never going to get there. So keep it moving.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's just on that point. Like I get frustrated so like after the 60-day challenge and I saw the progress that I made and I could do a bunch of push-ups, without breaks. And then I took the time off and then not off, but not as intense. And then I get back into it and it's harder the next time, right? I have to like rework at it and, and it's hard to like move past the mental game of, well, forget it. I'll just go back home. Right. Yeah. And like, no,
tough.
Because I know I can get there. I just need to be patient. Yeah.
Being patient is key. And then also figuring out other ways to measure yourself. There are one objective ways that you can definitely see like, oh yeah, yep, I'm getting good at this or I'm getting good at that. Or finding ways to fall in love with the process oh man, that sucked. But I know if I keep doing this, then it's going to get better like I did before. That process is very interesting. It's not for everybody. Not everyone is in love with the process, but some people, when you can like get their mindset to be, how that felt? Remember how before when you couldn't do 3 push-ups and then we did the plan and then you did, it's going to be like that all over again. Like sometimes people really internalize that and they get really excited about that. So sometimes I try to tap into that. It's all a mind game. It's all a mind game. I was telling my daughter yesterday, it was her first time on skates. She was all over the place. I'm like literally bicep curling her the whole way around. God. And I'm like, hey, she fell. She was crying. I'm like, hey, you're going to be laughing at this day one day. Only if you keep this up, though. Because if you never touch skates again, you're just going to be like this the next time. And there's going to be a day where like your friends, they're like, oh, come to the skating rink. Maybe it's a birthday party or something. Oh my God. You don't want to be the one sitting on the side.
So holding the wall the whole time. That was me. I held the wall the whole time. It was
You
terrible.
don't want to be the one sitting on the side. So I
Yeah.
said, let's do this. You got
Yeah.
this. Keep your butt back, nose
Yep.
over toes. Let's go. All right. Well, thank you so much. Oh wait, I have one more question, and this is kind of a tough question, so I'll give you some time to like think about it, come up with an answer. What have you, or what do you think you can take from your fitness journey and your professional journey that you can say, all right, I can draw a parallel between this and this? Are there any parallels? Can you draw parallels?
Yeah. And mostly it's the like what I try to teach my clients, putting it back on myself, right? So like
Oh wow.
the patience, right, of getting there, the transition plans for the lemurs, like that it takes a year to get there, you know, that it's going to take time and have patience. And if you need to take a step back, then you take a step back, you know, and like go to what was practical and working before, and then we'll try again and have the patience with that. Yeah. I mean, I can preach it all day long, but it's like me believing it for my own self and incorporating it into my life and how I view my fitness and my nutrition and, you know, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Isn't that something? Because I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were in some kind of like a PT program
I was
for your core.
Yep, I was. Yeah. And I was I was annoyed about that process because it was taking so long, right? It was like so I remember talking to you about, okay, this program's not working for me. Like my mental I'm not there. So it was too slow or too whatever. And I'm like, but what I do with you is working. And I just need you to help me modify things as I need to. Right. And so every time you gave me an alternate plan, like I was like, Mike, I'm getting the coning here. And you're like, okay, change it up by this, doing this, this, and this. And so I would do that because then I could still push myself in all the other areas of my body, but give grace to my core when it needed it, you know?
And now you're doing accentuated sit-ups for
I
time.
know.
Remember there was tension sit-ups we did the other day?
Yeah.
Those were
Oh my God,
tough.
my stomach hurt for days.
Seeing that process and understanding and knowing that we're on year 4 and you're still getting stronger.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing how you can not only take parallels from your work to your life, it's amazing how you can see like a process that you understand. This is working because I gave it the time and the attention that it needed.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks for taking the time with me,
For
Amanda.
sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.